Hey everybody, I'm Russo, and I do a little work here and there. You are watching Raconteur Weekly, and as the title would suggest, I'm talking about bases. Now, the reason I'm talking about bases is one that may be foreign to some people, and that is an issue of scale. See, I use the Samus Aran for scale a lot, and, scale is a whole bucket of worms that I'm sure I'll have to get into at some point, but for now we will say that her base brings with it, some problems. As I'm fairly sure I've alluded by this point, this base is moderately thin, but regardless of your concept of 28mm scale, it's still somewhere between 3 and 6 inches thick when you scale it up. While that may not seem like a huge deal, it can make all of the difference when your mini is standing next to, a window, or a car, or doorway, or anything like that. So again, it may not be a concern at all for some people, but for me, well, it just bothers me. So I tried to come up with something a little better. Say hello to our resident space elf crooner. He's not painted yet, and neither is his base, but you can at least see the base, and maybe I can explain what makes it so special. You see, it has 3 main components. That would be the base of the base, which in this case is a 220 grit sandpaper. It's probably not necessary, but it's what I used. Above that is a layer of RBC, which, in case you haven't been watching, is just baking soda mixed into a glue stick. This glue stick is purple, which is why there's a little bit of a purple undertone there. Let it sit long enough and that goes away. Also, the whole thing was coated in super glue at various points in its manufacture, so at this point it's pretty tough. Of course, the defining feature of this base is that despite the modeling on the top, despite how thick it may look, this miniature is standing directly on the basing material, the sandpaper. Given that that sandpaper is about the thickness of the 110-pound cardstock that I usually use, something like 1/100 of an inch. That makes the base's influence on the miniature's height something like 2/3 of an inch. And 2/3 of an inch is something that I can live with. It's much better than 4 inches or 6 inches or, however thick your current bases happen to be. So I'm going to take this Samus, crack her off the base that I have her on, since, it's a little ugly anyway. It's losing paint, and I blame that on Rub and Buff. Don't take this as an official review, but it's kind of just waxy garbage. But moving on, I've cracked her off the base, and I've shaved a little bit off of her feet. I think she was about 6'5", and she should be 6'3", so this should iron that out real quick. And I've also cut a small squarish piece of my sandpaper, which on the back has a little circle. Mine's in pencil, but you can draw yours however. Step 1 is to cut that circle out. And once it is cut out, you can start with either side, doesn't really matter, and drip some super glue on it. I use a toothpick to spread that around, because you don't really want it too thick in any particular area. And then I flip it around and I do the other side. Take care, by the way, to hold it by the edges. You might super glue this to your fingers, and if you do, the edge is a fine place to do it, since any sort of damage that you do there can just be clipped off. Once that's had a second to cure, you can apply a thin layer of RBC. The stuff I'm using here is very old, and as you can see when you squeeze it around, it's got this, texture to it. It's totally fine, and it shouldn't affect the strength of the product at the end. I'm just going to spend a little time kneading it before I decide it's good to go. Past that is a bit of modeling. I first stick the mini's feet into the RBC and move most of the material out of the way of those impressions. It might also be good at this point, since the RBC will hold onto their feet, at least temporarily, to mush down the surrounding areas and make it look like they're not standing in mud, unless you want them standing in mud. Of course, that's totally up to you. Once you have your details set, it's time to harden the RBC. There are a number of ways to do that, but seeing as this sandpaper is aluminum oxide sandpaper, I don't know about microwaving it. It might be fine, but you can test it with your microwave. I'm not going to blow up the one I've got. So the next quickest thing is putting it in the oven. I do this for about 5 minutes at 300F, and that gets it most of the way cured. It will dry out some more on its own later on. After a quick cooling session, the only thing left to do, other than painting, is to put another layer of super glue over the RBC. Maybe skip the footholes for now, so that no extra thickness is added there. Give that some time to cure, paint it, glue your person on. Maybe you could glue them on and then paint them, since that's what I'm doing with my other guy, but I'm going to skip past all of that and get straight to Samus on the finished base. Ah, there she is, looking as good as ever, which, depending upon your opinion, she may look good or bad. Either way, I don't think it's worse. So, yeah, thinner bases. That is my thought for now. Thinner bases. These are still moderately rigid. They have a bit of flex to them, so if they hit the floor, they won't snap or anything. But they might cause your minis to rebound and fly all over the room, who knows. The 80s Rogue Trader figure is pewter or lead or whatever you want to call it, so it has absolutely no problem standing up. And even though Samus is made out of cardstock, she doesn't seem to have problems either. So I will say I consider this a success. Though perhaps not a rousing one, I don't know. I was awake when I did it, I know that much. So in a manner of speaking, I was unrousable at the time. Call me biased. But that'll have to be it for now. Until next time, you've been watching Raconteur Weekly on Russo Works, and I'm Rousseau. Out.